Okay, this is a video tutorial on how to gather data from an Excel sheet in Google Sheets. This is Mr. Santos. This will be used for your survey project, and I'm going to show you how to use a few specific parts of Excel in order to make your project easier. This is to accompany the PowerPoint, which is also found in your Google Classroom. There might be some differences between the two, but using the two, you should be able to complete your project just fine. This is the results screen once everybody has taken your questions. When you open up your survey, you can see your survey, and then once people have started taking them, you can see the responses right here. When you're done with everybody taking your surveys, if you haven't done so, you should click the accepting responses button to make sure that no one else can take the survey, and you click the view responses in sheets button to bring up the Excel sheet where it will load the information automatically. Before you get started, if you haven't done so already, it would be a good idea to make a copy of your Excel sheet. This one I'm working with right now is already my copy. You should rename it and make sure you put it in a folder or create a folder so that you will be able to find these Excel sheets easily later. Make sure that the results sheets are shared with everybody in your group so that everybody has access to them at any time. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is how information is organized. Now, for us, I'm going to be using the fear survey, which most of you took. It has numerous questions, and I used a Likert scale, which is a 1 to 5 answer. On the left, you'll see the timestamp. This is when everybody took the surveys, and when you initially open it, it is always organized by the first column, so it is organized by time right now. Now with us, the way me and Mr. Rosari wish for you to write your results and your discussion and your conclusion is to be really based on demographics. All these answers that I have to these questions about people being afraid of being alone or making a mistake or death or whatever are interesting in total, but we also like to see how it affects maybe just males or just females or just 17-year-olds. And that's when you can start to draw comparisons and really see the differences in people. And that's the goal of most surveys, is to pick out information and to find out things about people. So, what do we consider to be demographics? Now, on my survey, I only have 2 demographic categories. I have gender and I have age. In yours, you'll most likely have race/ethnicity. You may have things like people who have played a sport, people who are in a relationship. Those kind of questions are considered demographics, and all the other questions you have in your survey are usually looking at the demographics, breaking it down. So, are females afraid of being alone? Are they afraid of death? Are 17-year-olds afraid of being alone? And it's a way to divide up the information. So most of you will have at least 3, if not 4 or 5 demographic categories that you can work with. We do not expect you to use all the demographic categories. This is going to be your choice because the write-up would end up being so cumbersome, and we want this to be a learning tool and not just something to punish you with information. So in my survey, if I were to do the entire write-up, I would only have the option of gender and age. You will have more than that option, and we do not want you to use age as one of your demographics. Mainly because people are too close to each other in age, and the information won't be as useful. So you can use gender, then you can use race, or use gender, and if yours is on video games, have you played video games, or have you played sports, or those kind of things. So it's gonna be your choice. Now we're gonna begin. So first, we're talking about how to organize columns, because this will make adding things up and figuring things out a little easier. So right now it's organized by time. To organize a column, you click on the header, and you can right click it and click sort sheet A to Z, or you click the arrow and click sort sheet A to Z. Before I continue, I just want to apologize if my voice sounds nasally or if it cracks. I'm currently fighting a cold. I'll do my best to drink some water and hopefully sound okay. So now I've clicked sort A to Z. It automatically changes all the columns that go along with each one of these, and now it's sorted by female, male, and not listed. My three options. This will make doing all the calculations and figuring things out much easier if you sort the demographic category you are working on in the moment. So I'm going to be working on gender. And for this survey, we're going to be looking at gender, or for this tutorial, we're going to be working on gender and on being alone. So we're gonna figure all that information out. Now, in doing the calculations here on the bottom, you want to keep it as organized as possible, and I always like to start with naming the categories, so I know what I'm looking at the bottom. So I'm going to start with participants, because we need to figure out how many people took this survey. Participant numbers. So we have total, and then we have female, male, and not listed. Now, this area right here is going to be a useful column because this isn't timestamp, it's not nothing we're going to track, and as I'll show you later, it's easier to at least see things visually if you keep the totals for columns underneath each column. So we're going to put this over here. So now how do we get the totals? Now obviously we can simply count. The problem is counting by hand, you can be wrong, or you can and it can end up impacting everything. And plus, it takes a long time. I have 153 people that took this survey, and to count everything by hand would make it take forever. So, how do I know 153 people took this survey? One, the last number here, the last row, is number 154, and it always starts on number 2, which means that 153 people took this survey. So, how do we get the computer to add it for us? We do that by using a formula, and the formula to count words is called Counta, C-O-U-N-T-A, and this is how we enter a formula into Excel. We always start with equal. We type the word of what we wanted to do, C-O-U-N-T-A, and we don't put spaces in anything. And then we use parentheses, which opens the bracket, and now we're going to tell the program what do we want it to count. And there's two ways to do this. One, we can simply type what the range we wanted to count to. So we know that this is column C and this is number 2, so that would be the first one to count. And we can just simply type that in. It'll be C2. Then we do colon, and then we put in the last range in it, which would be C154, and then we close the bracket and then hit enter. And there we go. We have 153 people. It counted it for us. The other way to enter a formula, and this is easier, especially if you're using a mouse, is equal Counta, open parentheses, and we go to the range, and you just click it, and then it automatically puts it in there. And you click and you drag. And I have a lot of participants, so it takes a little bit. Click and drag, and then let go. And you can just hit enter, and it automatically will do it that way as well. So if you find it difficult to click and drag if you're using a Chromebook or whatnot, then you're just going to need to know the exact spot you want it to count up to, which you always go by header first and then the number of the row. So next we're going to do female. Equal Counta, open parentheses, and we're going to click female, click and then drag, and then we stop on the last female and then hit enter. And then we do male, Counta, open parentheses. Now you could close the parentheses and it won't change anything, but you don't need to if you're clicking and dragging, because it will close the parentheses for you. So we have 79 female, 71 males. We can see that we have 3 not listed. Now you can simply type the number 3 in there, and there'll be 3 in there, which is fine. I like to keep things consistent, and because I could always end up having people take the survey again later, and what will happen is if I type the number in, it will not automatically adjust the numbers for me, which could end up being a real problem. Now, so we have, excuse me, so we have that all set. So we have participant numbers. Now, in regards to participant numbers, this is something you're going to want to do for every demographic. So I have 153 total. That will always be the same for anyone that you do, or whatever your number is. It could be 100 people. But these two down here, where we have female, we have male, and not listed, this could be in a relationship, not in a relationship, or I play video games, don't play video games, or white, black, Latino, or Hispanic, Asian, Caucasian, however, whatever words you use, but you would set it up basically the same way for you to be able to use. Now, the next part we're going to do is we're going to set up possible scores. So, and this is where the math part of it comes into play, and what we're going to get the computer to do for us. Let me just type this out. Oops. Possible total. Possible female, possible male, possible not listed. Okay, so now the participant numbers are your basic numbers. So what I'm doing here is a set of numbers that will end up being useful for any um, linkered based question. A linker question is one in which someone answered on a scale of 1 to 5. Because they answered on a scale um, of 1 to 5, we end up with these numbers over here. And these numbers are really easy to use, which is why me and Mr. Rosari encourage students to have their questions answered on a 1 to 5 scale because they're so easy to manipulate and they're very simple to understand the results. So, this part right here, now that we're setting up, will be the baseline that then we can reference all these answers to. Okay, so the max score someone can answer in a question is 5. The lowest is 1. Okay, so we need to know what the highest number we can deal with is. So for us, that would be possible total. What is the possible max answer we could end up with in a category? Okay, and for us, at least for me, it would be taking 5, which is the max answer someone can give, and multiplying that by the number of people that I have. So 5 times 153 will give me a number of, that's the highest. If everybody answered 5, that's the number I would end up with if I added that entire column together. Okay, so how do we put that in? So you can type equals 5 times 153, or you can do it the formula way. The formula way is better because if this total number changes, then it will automatically change the number down here, where they say all of a sudden, oh, I have 154 or 155 or 160. Then I have to go through by hand and change this one, and then change this one, and then change this one, and it ends up being a lot of work. So if you put in the correct formula, it will save you time. So how do we put in the correct formula? It would be equal and 5, because that's the max score we can get, times in Excel is the star. It's not X. Okay, it's the star. And then we click on what we want to multiply. So we want to multiply 153 times 5. And by clicking on it, we're telling the computer, hey, go to C157 and use the information there in my formula. Okay, and we just hit enter. 5 times 153 is 765. And then we just do the same thing for the other ones. Now there are obviously many more formulas that I'm going to be showing you, and there are many ways to manipulate even what I'm doing now. There's a way to make these things way more complicated. I'm not going to go over that though. I'm trying to keep it as simple for you as possible. All right, so there we go. So we have 3 not listed people. If they answered 5, if all 3 of them answered 5 to a question, the max score I can get from them is a 15. Okay, that's how you know you're doing it right, when you can do the math with your own calculator and you're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, now this is the base information we have, and this will end this part right here. We're going to end up using this for all for understanding all our other categories that we have. Okay. Now, before we move forward, and and you're gonna end up seeing me do this when we start talking about the being alone column. But when you go to do your write up, you can say, oh, we had 153 people take this, 79 were female, 71 were male, 3 were not listed. But sometimes talking about numbers like that doesn't give them the meaning that they deserve. So sometimes it's better to talk about percentages or scores. So in regards to participant numbers or um, age or whatever it may be for your demographics, it's usually easier to talk about, hey, we have 30% female, we have 30% Hispanic, and so we need to get the percentages. So we're going to do that and get that out of the way before we move on to anything else. So identifying gender percentage. So what I've done is taken the category, which is to which gender do you most identify, and I'm just gonna get the percentage from it. And this is the kind of thing you can do. I mean, you can really kind of type this stuff anywhere. I like to keep stuff that is unrelated to the category that I'm in all the way to the left, and you can just keep on going down, typing whatever it is you need, because this is gonna be for you to reference. You're gonna print out these Excel sheets, but it's okay if it's a slight mess, so that way you at least understand what you needed, what you have the information in a place where you can just grab it when you actually go to do your writing. So we have female, male, and not listed. I'm not doing total because total would be 100%. So I don't need to see that number. Let's see. So how do we get a percent? We take one number and we divide it by the other. So, excuse me. So we take the small number divided by the big number. So our total is 153, and the small number for female is 79. So you can just do equals 79 divided by 153. But again, remember, if these numbers change, you'll have to go through and change all of these as well. So I'm going to do the formula way. So we take equal, and we click 79. We hit backslash, and then the number we want to divide it by. So we did equals C158 divided by C157, and it automatically does it. Then we're going to do equals for male, divide by total, and we do equals for not listed, we divide by 153. There we go. Now we end up with these decimals. We don't want to keep decimals. You can't use this. This is not useful for you. So simply you just come up to the top and we click format as percent. And then we don't like decimals again. So we can move that over, and then it rounds it nicely to 52. So we're going to do the same thing with this one. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. So now we have it all done. So to change something, it's up here, format as a percent, format as money. You can do all kinds of stuff, okay? And we can move the decimal places over using these buttons, okay? Now when you go to do your write-up, I can say 52% of females, 2% not listed, and it's just a way to talk about the information, okay? So you can do that for all the demographic categories and turn them into percents. So it's also a good way, or not a good way, but it's an easy way to be able to mix up the wording you're using in your write-up. You can sometimes say 71 males or 46% males. It's just a way to mix it up so it doesn't feel like you're constantly copying yourself. Okay, now I'm going to be putting stuff right to the right here, and using this space. I can because this is another demographic. It's not a question, and it's not one that I'm going to be totaling. If you feel that if you don't like the idea of putting information directly under another column, um, you can always insert a column, so you have a nice blank space. If you don't want to be having your equations or your wording underneath a column you're going to end up using later. Okay, so now to go back to scoring. So we have the possible scores here. These are the highest scores possible. Now we're going to be figuring out the we're done with the demographic. So this is it. Have the entire demographic done. This goes with the demographic, and this goes with the demographic. And those two steps you can repeat for any demographic you have. Now I'm going to be dealing with how do you calculate the question and to the regular questions. So this is a Likert scale. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. I didn't ask a question in my survey in which students could give a word answer. I on purpose used the scale question because for me that's data that's easier to deal with. Now, if you have questions that aren't on a scale, and you want me to, I can make a second tutorial on how to add up those or figure out information using that. But I'm not going to be doing that in this tutorial. So now we're going to be calculating being alone. So first thing we need to do is score. So I'm naming this little category actual score. So this will be adding up what the actual numbers are. So not listed would be 5 plus 2 plus 2. So that means together they scored a 9. So we're going to do actual total, actual female, actual male, and actual not listed. Now I named it actual because that is the difference between what is versus the possible of what could be. And that's really where we're going to be drawing comparisons. This is the highest possible total that I could get for being alone, but what did they actually put for being alone? And that's what we're figuring out here. Okay, so we have actual score. So we need to total this up. And now, how do we total? In Excel, it is the formula phrasing is sum, S-U-M. So we would use the sum function equals SUM, open the bracket, and again, the same way as you did before, you could type in the actual column code, which for this one is column E for me, so that could be E2 to E154, or you can click on it and drag. I am dragging because I can use a mouse and it makes life a lot easier. So 357. Okay, so that's what they actually score. So those are all these digits added together is 357. Now we're going to do that for female. Let me type in sum, open bracket. I'm going to female. I'm dragging, and female ends at E80. Enter. Sum, SUM, open the bracket. We're going to go to male. And then the last one. Now, the last one, obviously, like I said before, you can just type it in. It's 9. But this kind of shows you that you are doing it correctly. 9. So, just like that, we have the column, what it actually is. So, and you know that the female male not listed is correct if it adds up to the total. So 197 plus 151 plus 9 is 357. Now, when you go to do your write-up, if you use wording like, oh, 150 or male scored 151 on my being alone scale, that has no meaning to anyone, especially me, the teacher who's scoring your project. So we need to convert that to something we understand. And the best way to convert it is on a 100-point scale. Out of 100 points, 50 believe this, or 75 believe this, or something like that, where we can at least wrap our minds around it, and gives it meaning, and you're able to write about it. So we need to convert it. So we're going to do a scale conversion. Okay, so we have the possible score, which is here. We have the actual score, and now we're going to have the conversion score. This little section right here is going to be what you are going to be really using in your write-up. You're going to be using your percentages over here and your scale conversion score over here. And the best way to look at these categories and these conversion score is that you created like a test, or not really a test, but it's a scale. It's a way to read someone's thoughts on being alone, or making a mistake, or death. In my survey, or in yours, would be how much time they spend on something, or are they a good student, or how much homework do they do, or how do they feel about school. You're creating a scoring system for that question. Okay, so we need to do scale total, scale female, scale male, scale not listed. I have not mentioned this, but it's kind of far into this tutorial, but if you do mess up, there's always a back button. Undo. Makes your life a lot easier. Okay, now, in regards to my survey and my example here, everything is total, female, male, not listed. Again, whatever demographic you're using, it would be, it could be scale black, scale white, scale Hispanic, whatever it is, whatever demographic information you're using. And that's how you would do it. Okay, so what we need to do is to convert the actual scores into a score that we can work with, understand, and use in our write-up that would make sense to somebody reading it. So we're going to put it on a 100-point scale. Okay? Now this must be typed exactly as I show you, because if you do not, you'll get an error. Now if you end up with it, it'll have like a little error thing. It might say ERR or NAV or something that's not what you expect. You just delete it, you start again, typing it in until you get it right. All right, so for me, well, for me, remember, any numbers that I'm using are specific to my chart, so yours will use slightly different columns, or the ranges and that kind of stuff. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So, excuse me, I'm just looking at my notes. Okay. Um, so we hit equal, and we go to the number we're going to be working with, which is 357 here. So that is column E, row 157 for me. So that's what you see there. We're going to divide that by this 765 that we see over here. Okay, so again, it's just like percentages like we had done before. You take the small number and you divide it by the big number. So the actual number we got versus what it could have been. Okay, so for me that's 357 divided by 765. Okay, now we're going to add one more thing to this. We're going to multiply by 100. Okay, and then hit enter. The reason we multiply by 100 is because we want to get a whole number, because otherwise we would get a decimal, but we don't want to press the percent button up here. And the reason we want to do that will become clear in a second. Okay. Now there's one more thing we need to do this formula before we are done. So you need to edit the formula. Okay. Up here you can always see the formula that you're typing, and then once you click on it, it appears back over here. We're going to go in and add something to it. So we go right before, for at least for mine, it's right before the C, right after the divide, the backslash, and we're going to add a number sign. And then we're going to go after the C and add another number sign. Okay, and we're going to hit enter. Okay, you should still end up with the same exact answer. The reason we want to do this is the number sign locks the C in place. And the reason I'm doing that is that will allow me to copy this formula, which will be very useful to us. Okay, moving forward. Okay, and the only way to copy the formula is to lock it. Okay, so now we just need to repeat that step. We take the number, we divide, so we're taking actual female, we divide it by possible female, multiply it by 100, then we're going to go into it, we're going to add the dollar signs, before and after, the column letter, okay, we're not putting spaces in anything, we're just equal, actual male, divide that by possible male times 100. And then we're taking the not listed and dividing it by the possible not listed, multiplying it by 100. Now, the reason I haven't even suggested just typing this number in is because we have to use a formula here. This will allow us to copy it, copy this formula, and once we have totaled one column, it will automatically total the other columns, saving you tons of work. And that's why we're actually taking all the time to do this initially. You're going to be like, oh, it's taking so much time, blah, blah, blah. Trust me, sitting with a calculator, multiplying or adding and adding and adding and adding, and then if you mess one up, someone talks to you, you have to start all over. This is much faster. And if there's a mess up, you can just look at the formula and fix it. Let me enter on that one. Okay. So we have to make sure we put the dollar sign in. dollar sign. Oh, now for us, we want to take all the decimals out. So I'm moving it right over, not clicking the percentage button. We don't want a percentage. Okay, so we're just going to move it over, and we're going to move this one over. Okay, now the reason I don't want you to click the percentage button is because it's, I mean, technically it's a percentage. When that's what we're doing, taking one number dividing it by another, but it doesn't mean percent. And we're done with the being alone column. It's all done. And I'll tell you this: um, we have a scale score of 47 for being alone. That doesn't mean 40% of students, 47% of students are afraid of being alone. That's not what that means. So if you put a percent there, that's what you're going to think. And then your write-up's going to be wrong. Okay? And this is very important. This is the part you cannot mess up, because it'll wreck your results, your discussion, and your conclusion, and you won't understand, and you won't have a proper write-up, and your grade will suffer because of this. 47 represents the average score on our being alone scale. Okay, so for me, 3 meant much terror. That for being alone, people felt much afraid of being alone. Okay, um, if they if they clicked 2 for their answer, like this one is a 2, that means they felt some fear of being alone. Okay, a 3 would be much fear. So what we found is that they scored 47 on the scale. And if you look in the how to gather data survey, how to gather data from your survey PowerPoint, actually I might just bring that up during the tutorial so you can see it, just so you can see what I'm talking about before we finish up our survey here. If you notice, I have folders which allow me to access my data and find things rather quickly. Okay, so here we go. And pretty much everything I just covered is in here. Okay, including how to read this. Okay, so this is what the scale score conversion means. So, excuse me. If someone answered a 3, that it's really a 3 fits on 4 to 60 out of 100 points. A 2 is 20 to 40, and that's how you can talk about your results. So we have a 3, which is really in the middle. It's 40 to 60. So click on it. So what we have is females are dead set in the center. They feel much terror, like dead on. Okay, it's not 50% of females. It's females as a total are averaging 50 on our being alone scale. Okay, don't use the word percent ever. Okay, because that's not what it means. While males on our scale score fell at a 43. Now, 43 and 50 are both in the middle, okay? But there is a difference. And what we see here is that even though females and males are both scoring in the center average, males are closer to to the next category down. And in your write-up, you can write about that kind of thing. Where, oh, look, females, males, or blacks and whites, or whatever it may be. People who play video games don't play video games. People people who play sports, don't play sports, their scores are actually similar, but there is a slight difference, and that's the kind of thing you write about. So for me, males are almost in the next category for being alone. Okay, so does that say something about males? Do females are slightly more afraid of being alone? Because that's what this says. Even though they're both in the middle, females are slightly more on our scale score. Okay, now I'm done with my little spiel there. Now this is why we want to put a formula in, and this is what makes doing all of this a lot easier than people realize. So we can take our sum ones over here, you see right here, and we can just you go to the little square that's right here in the corner, you get the little cross symbol and see how it changes, and we click and we drag, and it automatically does it. We click and we drag, we click, click. So there we go. It automatically summed each category. So look, we have the possibles never change. Possibles always the same because we have the same number of questions, the same 1 to 5 scale. So that's never going to change. So that's why we never needed to drag it out. That's why I could put it where it was on my sheet. I put actual here and score total here because these numbers do change. Okay, and for your whatever demographic you're using, you'll need to repeat these 2 categories or these 2 sections below. Okay, so it's summed it automatically. We know that because I can check easily. Look, for death we have 1, 2, 1, which is 4, and there it is. There's 4. So it automatically added them up. And I can drag. I have 50 questions, and I can just drag it right across. That could save me an hour of time. And now we can drag this as well, and it'll give us our scale score within seconds. And the reason it worked was because we have the possible score in the right place, and we have our actual score in the right place. And we locked that second number with those dollar signs. Okay, because if you don't lock it, it'll give you the incorrect number. So you just got to make sure you follow your steps exactly. For all of you, if you want to use gender as your demographic, then you can copy what I have here exactly to the category names, to everything that you see. Okay, and that wouldn't be a problem. And then you just do it on your own for the other one. Oh, perfect example of what happens if you don't do it right. Oh, I'm so glad I did this. I forgot to do the dollar sign. Some of you may have noticed. So when you do it right, there it is. Okay. When you do it wrong, that's what happens. You get, it says hashtag value. So we need to fix that. So what happens if I did this? I can hit the undo button and go in, change it, and drag it, or I can just fix it right now on the first one, which I should have done, and I missed. And I can re-drag it over, and it will fix it automatically. There you go. And now, remember, we don't want decimals, and so for this one, we got to move those decimals over. Okay, and there we go. Perfect. I'm glad that mistake was there. Now, for me, I like to fancy up things. You don't need to do that. So I'm just going to label my category so I can actually tell that that's a category and not something else I'm working with, just so I can see the differences in things. And these are the little things that you can do if you feel the need for it. just so you know, your teacher will have access to all your sheets and stuff like that. Those kind of things. Otherwise, this is the end of the tutorial. If you have a question or if you mess up drastically, um, you should have everyone should have shared or made shared your Excel sheet with your teacher so that your teacher has access to it, and we can always go in if needed to help you out um, over the holiday break. Right, that concludes this tutorial.